Hi Whovians, Harry here, and now that the dust has settled on Doctor Who Season 2, I thought now would be a good time to go over my review of the whole series. So, was this era a success or a failure? Was it better than Doctor Who Season 1? Are we on the right track? Are we hopefully going to get a Doctor Who Season 3? Well, this is my review of Doctor Who Season 2. But before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe. Also, leave a like and comment down below. And let's get into the video. So, this series was definitely a mixed bag. It started off really well, with there being a slightly darker tone to this series than there was than Series 1, which was a really good thing that a lot of fans wanted a darker tone. Something that Doctor Who is renowned for, making people hide behind their sofa with how scary it is. And really, we haven't had that for a long time. So this felt like a real return to form for what Doctor Who is more known for, especially with episodes like The Well and Lucky Day, with really terrifying scenes that could get you potentially hiding behind the sofa, of course, depending how scary you find it, with definitely some scenes of the Midnight Entity sneaking out from behind Rose Aileen Ellis's character. So, of course, it was very good that it started off really well with something that fans wanted. However, as it got on, there was definitely mixed feelings about the overarching story that eventually just kind of exploded onto the screen, and not really in a good way. But before we get into my review of actual specific episodes, let's talk about the characters of this series, and where is better to start than the Doctor. Of course, the main character of this series that has been there, of course, since the start, because it's Doctor Who, the Doctor. So, of course, this is when I think 15 has finally hit his stride. He seems a lot more confident and a lot more doctory than he did in Season 1, which is actually very impressive, seeing that Season 1 and Season 2 were filmed back to back. So he hasn't had really any time to refine his character of the Doctor, but it does seemingly seem a lot better than his Doctor in Season 1. And I think a lot of it had to do with what he was given in this series, because the scripts and the episodes are a lot stronger than they were in Season 1. Season 1, not Series 1, that was back in 2005. But yeah, Season 1 was a lot more light and just have a good time, vibes really, than this more darker, more focused at the start story for the Doctor, which I think is what gave 15 a lot more to do. And Ncuti Gatwa brings it to the front straight away. As I say, he wasn't bad in Season 1, but he's just given a lot more to do in Season 2. And he does that amazingly. We see a darker version of the Doctor, which is something fans have definitely been wanting ever since the Rage of the Capaldi era. And we haven't seen that with 13, 14, or even 15 until this series. So it was amazing to see it, because of course there is rage against Omo in the episode The Story and the Engine. There is rage against Conrad in Lucky Day. There is terror and other scared emotions in The Well. And he even resorts to torturing Kid in the episode The Interstellar Song Contest, which is perhaps the darkest we have ever seen. Well, a lot of the Doctors literally torturing a guy. That is dark, especially for a character like the Doctor. However, really where this character comes undone is the story arc at the end. So, I will leave it a bit later in this video to talk about, of course, where this story ends up at. So, of course, the next character I want to talk about is the companion to this doctor, Belinda Chandra. Now, she is set up a lot better than Ruby Sunday was in the Church on Ruby Road and throughout season 1. She seems like a more sure, more, well, self-assured, more defined character at the start, where she is a nurse that just wants to get back home. She is not impressed with the Doctor's adventures, and it is so refreshing to see, especially after a starry-eyed 19-year-old that was just whisked away, promised adventures, and just went along with whatever the Doctor wanted. Seeing Belinda Chandra, Vara DeSafo's character, go through this story where she doesn't she just wants to go home, isn't impressed by the Doctor, but eventually goes to like her adventures with the Doctor, is so great to see. It is a bit like how Donna was in The Runaway Bride, where she wasn't impressed with the Doctor at all, didn't want these adventures, and then of course in Series 4 she came back and wanted to travel with the Doctor, so it's kind of like that, but in just one series. And she seems like a really good character, set up in the early episodes like The Robot Revolution, Lux and The Well as a really well-defined character. However, entering the back end of the series, she just gets pushed to the sidelines. Of course, Lucky Day is a Doctor-like story, so she's not in that much. And then the next week, she is hardly in the episode The Story and the Engine either, only in like the second part of the episode. And then in the episode The Reality War, she is just put in the Zero Room and mostly forgotten about for like 15 minutes. So, yeah, she's not given a lot to do, which is insane because she was set up really well, that people were saying that she was a lot better than Ruby to begin with, and then after episode 4, she's just really kind of forgot about, which is insane, and really, it makes Ruby a much better character in this series. Yes, because of course, Ruby Sunday, the Doctor's companion from last season, is in this one as well, and she actually plays an integral role in a couple of episodes from this series, and she is really good. However, that actually presents a problem, because if Ruby is better in this series than she was when she was companion to the Doctor, and also is better than the main companion to the Doctor in this series, that presents a major problem. Because really, yes, she should be put on the sidelines since she is not the main companion. However, with the story from Pete McTighe and also the story from Russell T Davies himself, she has a lot more character development in this series than she did in the last one, and it made me like Ruby a lot better than last time. And actually, I think I am more of a Ruby defender than a lot of other Doctor Who fans that watched last series. I felt, that she was a bit swept away. There wasn't much connection between her and the Doctor, rather than the Doctor just telling us. But I did think that she had some good moments. I mean, she's only 19. That is a lot of pressure to put on her, especially with the tabloids saying that she was kicked out of Doctor Who for being a diva. Of course, that isn't the case since she was in Doctor Who Season 2. But yeah, she does a lot better in this series than she did in the previous one, with Lucky Day, of course, being a standout episode for her, because really, she has to carry that episode. With the Doctor and Belinda hardly in that episode, there is up to Ruby, the character that we know, of course, more than the other characters like Kate, Colonel Ibrahim, Shirley. Is up to Ruby to carry that episode, and she does, with Lucky Day being a really strong episode that I really like, and Pete McTighe just does an excellent job, and actually turns maybe the hindrance of not having the Doctor in this episode into a strength. And of course, we still get a standout Doctor moment from this episode. We get a Doctor speech to Conrad at the end of Lucky Day. Something that this Doctor has seriously been lacking. I love the little speeches from Tennant, Smith and Capaldi when they were the Doctor, speeches of how they won't give up, how they will save the day, and this is something that this Doctor has really been lacking. But in Lucky Day, he does get a Doctor speech, and I find it really powerful, even if Conrad doesn't. And, of course, that brings me to talking about Conrad. Yes, Conrad was the villain in Lucky Day, and yeah, in Lucky Day, the twist of him being, well, really, really vile is actually a twist that I never saw coming. And it is amazing because we just didn't expect that, or at least I didn't. And it's just amazing that Ruby's whole world is really shattered in this one scene. And Jonah Hauer-King, who plays Conrad, played this role so well. You hate him when he does this to Ruby. And I feel like we don't get this enough in modern eras. Like, villains are always really complex and we feel bad for, like, hating on these villains. But I think that should be returned. They are the villains for a reason. We're not supposed to find them redeemable. We want to side, of course, with the heroes. And I think we get this in Lucky Day. Of course, at the start of Lucky Day, you do kind of feel sorry for him, and then in Wishworld and the Reality War, you find him even more sympathetic with what has been happening. But yeah, in Lucky Day, for the majority of it, you do find him irredeemable, which is a good thing. However, he is just a normal human, and when he returns in Wishworld and the Reality War as one of the big three, one of the unholy trinity, it does almost come a bit out of nowhere. He has created this whole wish world, and it kind of makes sense, he wants this certain world. But why is the Rani even using him? It's not explained really why they need Conrad to break the world to get to the Underverse. Could they not find it a different way to take Omega out? The Rani, I don't know, it's just a bit weird that he is suddenly, king of the world when he was just a human podcaster, person in Lucky Day that just wanted to expose the lies of UNIT, which of course were not lies. Yeah, it's just weird. And again, something that is even more weirder is the other members of the Unholy Trinity. Of course, Mrs. Flood turns out to be the Rani in, of course, the climax of the Interstellar Song Contest. However, why do we have a bi-generation of Mrs. Flood's Rani, and then she kind of took a backseat? Anita Dobson is an amazing actress, and she is kind of a national treasure. So why have you then sidelined her to be like the sidekick, like the limp sidekick that doesn't even stand up for themselves? Because, of course, Archie Punjabi's Rani is amazing. However, she doesn't even get hardly any screen time because she gets eaten by Omega in... Basically, she had 2 episodes, and not even that, because she gets eaten by Omega in her second full-length episode. Like, what? And also, it makes it even more embarrassing for her, because Omega is only in this episode, in Doctor Who Season 2, for 5 minutes. 5 minutes is all he's in it, and he doesn't even look like Omega from the classic series. He doesn't even behave like Omega from the classic series. He is Omega in name only. And you know what? I am fine with the redesign of Omega. Really, I am. But really, you need his mind, his intelligence, his hatred for Time Lords in a different way from other than trying to eat 3 Time Lords and succeeding in eating 1, because he does not have any backstory like he did in the 3 Doctors, or the Arc of Infinity, I think is what it's called, when he faces up against, of course, the 3 Doctors in the 3 Doctors, and of course the 5th Doctor in his second outing ever. But he is not Omega in the Reality War. I mean, he's just not. He's just nothing like he was in the classic era. And this just makes me feel sorry for Archie Punjabi, because how many times do you get to play a beloved character in a sci-fi series as beloved as Doctor Who? Really, hardly ever. I mean, only a few people are lucky enough to play the Master. Even less people are lucky enough to play the Rani. And, of course, a few more people are lucky enough to play the Doctor. But yeah, it's lucky. However, this Rani was done so dirty. She is in really only one full-length episode, a post-credit scene in the Interstellar Song Contest, and like half of the Reality War, where she is just immediately eaten by Sutekh. And sorry, not Sutekh. See, Sutekh was so bad, I'm getting him and Omega mixed up. She's eaten by Omega, and yeah, that is it. We'll never see her again because she's dead. And, of course, I just have to say, how the Doctor defeated Sutekh was so dumb as well, by blasting him. Like, Sutekh didn't even manage to climb out of his chamber before he was dealt with by the Doctor. And also, I thought Russell T Davies changed the design of the sonic screwdriver because he didn't like how it was gun-like. I don't know how he could come to the idea that the sonic looks like a gun. How? I don't know. But yeah, he changed the design for that. Yet the Doctor literally blasts the Vindicator like a gun at Omega. Russell, get your facts straight. Do you want the Doctor to have a gun-like weapon or not? I just can't. I just can't. And unfortunately, it doesn't end there for negatives. I have been trying to stay positive, but yeah, unfortunately, this era was a mess. Because I do want to talk about UNIT, because they are actually in quite a few episodes. And while I thought Kate Stewart's, appearance in Lucky Day was amazing, she goes off the deep end in the best way possible, and we really get the fact that she is like her own character. A lot of people has complained that she just says that she's the Brigadier's daughter and we're supposed to treat her with the same love as we did with the Brigadier. However, I think she finally comes into her own in this series, or at least in Lucky Day, because she is amazing in that. However, a lot of the other characters are sidelined, as Conrad manages to outwit UNIT in Lucky Day, and then of course they are dealt with again by Conrad in the two-part finale, more Wishworld than the Reality War. But yeah, they are kind of dealt with in a way that doesn't really work for UNIT. They are a big global corporation in this new era of Doctor Who, whereas in the classic era they were kind of in the shadows trying to save the world from a small little army base. Of course, now they are in the public eye because they have their own like Avengers Tower, but they are still trying to keep a small cast with the same characters returning, whereas you wouldn't really have the same characters returning if you had a big Avengers Tower with lots of personnel. I mean, in the first Russell T Davies era, we had different unit sergeants and soldiers keep coming back every single episode. There was someone different every single time we encountered UNIT, and that was great for how big UNIT was, because they basically seem like the military now. But they are trying to combine the best of both worlds and failing at both. With really, other than Kate, people like Shirley and Colonel Ibrahim not getting the time of day to have something big to do in the Doctor Who episodes that they appear in. So UNIT, again, is kind of done dirty. But now let's look at the episodes individually. So first up, of course, is The Robot Revolution, which is a lot better story than last season's series opener, Space Babies. The Reboot Revolution is a lot better than Space Babies. It is almost like the perfect combination to start this new era. It is a normal Doctor Who episode that is like pure sci-fi, that is amazing, that sets the tone for what Doctor Who is really like, and actually is a good episode as well in itself that gives us wanting more. So I think that is really good. And then that is followed up by Lux, which is a solid episode as well. I'm not a big fan of it right now as I was when it first came out, because I do feel like Lux isn't as intimidating as he was supposed to be, even though Mr. Ring-a-Ding did take over the internet with a viral sensation. Of course, that is great to see Doctor Who being viral, so that is great. But yeah, he wasn't that intimidating. Also, the meta connections with the fans, I think, was that too much? I think they carried it off pretty well, with it being a really good episode, especially Mr. Pie being a standout side character, which I think was really great. So it is a great episode, but not as good as I originally first thought it was. And then we get to probably what I think is the best episode in this series, The Well, written by co-written by new writer Sharma Angel Wolfel, along with, of course, Russell T Davies. And I think The Well is an amazing episode. It is Return to Midnight, but they don't butcher the Midnight entity. It is a great callback to a not classic, but a Doctor Who episode from ages ago, really, now. And I think it is great, with there being real horror and jump scares that do make you want to hide behind the sofa, even if it's only for like a couple of seconds. But I do really think that it is a great episode. The terror is up there well. All the side characters are doing great. Rose Aylan Ellis, great as well. Shia, sorry, I forgot the actress's name, but she is great as well. She is one of the standout side characters of the whole series. And this episode is amazing. Really a return to form for Doctor Who. And luckily, Lucky Day keeps this train going, with Pete McTighe delivering an amazing Doctor Light episode. As I said, sometimes I would think it would be a hindrance if you don't have the Doctor in a Doctor Who episode, but he actually turns that into a strength, with, of course, Ruby Sunday, Millie Gibson delivering the performance of a lifetime, absolutely carrying this episode, along with Jonah Howard-King and also Gemma Redgrave as well. All of them do amazing, and this episode is really great as well, just in itself. I was a bit worried with what Pete McTighe has written before for Doctor Who, which I think is Kablam and Praxeus. Not great episodes, if I'm being honest, but Lucky Day is a great episode, so I am so glad that Pete McTighe did really well. Was rooting for him, and he absolutely pulled this episode out the bag. And then we get to the story and the engine, written by, again, a new writer, Anoon Elims. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I wasn't a big fan of this when it first came out, but I am more a fan of it now, kind of a reverse of Lux. Because, yes, while this character does sideline Belinda and the Doctor's morals are a bit skewed, I think it is an amazing character-driven episode with standout moments and, of course, a cameo from the fugitive Doctor that we never saw coming. And I think it is a great episode, showing actually how much the Doctor and even Belinda have travelled in this time, with them being able to find out that the barber was lying about being a god. And it just shows how much the Doctor has lived throughout his whole life. And of course, it also goes back to the what Doctor Who has mentioned throughout many episodes, that everyone is important, that even a normal life is important. So I think that is great. Not as good as the other episodes written by these new writers, but a good episode still. And then we get to the final episode written by a new writer, Juno Dawson, of course being the Interstellar Song Contest. Again, I thought this episode would be really good given the scope of it, and it was. I think this is some of the best writing we've ever had for the 15th Doctor, and this is, of course, all down to Juno Dawson being the main writer, so she absolutely pulls it out the bag. I did have high hopes for this episode, given that she wrote the Doctor Who audio spin-off, Doctor Who Redacted, and she does just as well in this episode as she does for that spin-off. So I think that is great. And then we get to the mess of the two-part finale, Wishworld and the Reality War, which is just a complete, utter mess. The Rani is done dirty, Omega is done dirty, Unit are done dirty. It is just a complete, utter mess. Poppy being the Doctor's daughter, but then not being the Doctor's daughter, being Belinda's daughter. Conrad getting a normal life, however, he doesn't have a normal life. Of course, it's just crazy all over, and nothing states that more than, of course, the Doctor regenerating. Because yes, unfortunately, the 15th Doctor does not last longer than this series, because he regenerates at the end of this series in the episode The Reality War. Replaced, maybe, by Billie Piper. Even Russell T Davies says he doesn't know if she's going to be the next Doctor, which again is just weird. Why would you put Billie in there if you don't even know what character she is playing? It is amazing to see the 13th Doctor. She is perhaps the best written than in this 5-minute cameo than she was in her whole 3 series as the Doctor and her little year specials as well. So that is great to see her return. Jodie Whittaker absolutely pulls the performance of a lifetime for her Doctor. But yeah, this episode is just a complete, utter mess. That is just... The thing is, I can't even give you a good plot synopsis of this 2-part finale, because in my mind, it's just a mess. If you want to go back, watch my reviews of the whole thing, there will probably be a playlist linked up in the cards above, so check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, this is just a complete, utter mess in my opinion. And unfortunately, this is where I leave season 2, because yeah, this Doctor was just hitting his stride. This series started out so good with, kind of really 6 amazing episodes, one week after the other. But when it got to the finale, which should be the best episode, it just fell flat. And, okay, so if I had to give a ranking of my episodes, I think I would put, at the bottom, I think I would put Wishworld. Really, it's just set up for what is to come in the final. So, as it's just set up, nothing much happens, which is why I can't really rank it any higher. I mean, it's an alright episode, so maybe it shouldn't be, but in my mind, it just is. Then, in 7th place, we have The Reality War. Again, it's just a mess. There's good moments from Ruby, the Doctor, even Kate and Conrad, but it's just a mess overall. They butcher the Rani and Omega, so it's and what happens at the end is just a mess with Billie Piper. I don't know. So that is where I put it, second from bottom. Then actually, I think I would go with Lux. As I said, my time on it has kind of gone down. Really, a great episode stands the test of time. And even though, there were great standouts, Mr. Ring-a-Ding goes viral, I think I can't rank it higher than 6th place, really. Yeah, it just feels like it's gotten worse over time rather than better. Then, in 5th place, I think I would put The Robot Revolution. It's a good series opener, but it's just like a good series opener. A good episode, but nothing special. Then, at 4th place are we at now? I think I would put The Story and the Engine. Again, my time on it has improved, which is good, but not improved massively as to get better than these certain episodes. So, we are entering my top 3. So, At number 3, I think I would go with the Interstellar Song Contest. Yes, it is a good episode. However, there are weird things like Belinda not holding the Doctor accountable for this, or no one holding the Doctor accountable for this. There are great side characters, like Gary and Mike, I think. But Mike is a nurse, but you already have a nurse companion, Belinda, that could do everything he could do. But you just decide to sideline the companion, which is weird. And of course, there's nothing stand out from really the villains, because they get defeated pretty quickly for a 45-minute episode, really. And at number 2, we have Lucky Day. Yes, Lucky Day was an amazing episode. Again, Pete McTighe did a really good job, as well as Millie Gibson herself does an amazing job in this episode. The twist from Conrad being just actually against Ruby and Unit was just, wow, that really came out of nowhere in the best way possible. And yeah, there were even some terrifying scenes of the Shriek that, again, was a bit like hide behind the sofa, even if it was just for a couple of seconds. So yeah, it was a really good episode, but nothing can top number 1 being The Well, because yes, Sharma Angel Wolfell and Russell T Davies absolutely blew this out of the park. This is the best episode of Doctor Who that there has been probably since the Capaldi era. Yes, I am going that far, because this episode was just amazing. They didn't ruin the Midnight Entity. It had all the amazingness of the episode Midnight, and of course there are standout performances from the Doctor, Shire, and Alice as well. So yeah, that episode was just amazing. However, overall, this series does suffer from the fact that it was Ncuti Gatwa's last series. He finally hit his stride as the Doctor, and no matter how much they try to say this was always the plan, this was never going to be the plan. I mean, Billie Piper's body does look photoshopped onto the Doctor. I don't know whether it is, but high likelihood is it is. And we don't know whether we're even going to get a season 3, 4, 5 of Doctor Who. I mean, it might just end there. We might have a battlefield or survival, I think it's survival, situation on our hand, which was the last serial of classic Doctor Who, where, yeah, it just ends kind of abruptly. And really, I wish they had done just a Fade to Black regeneration, because then that way, at least, yeah, we could have had a, maybe someone come back sooner with a fresher perspective than Russell T Davies. And really, it doesn't bode well, because if he's sticking around, Doctor Who might just get cancelled, because it doesn't bode well that the 4 new writers produce better episodes than Russell T Davies. All of my top 4 were better, were my top 4 in this episode of good episodes. And really, that does not bode well for the future of Doctor Who. But yeah, hopefully Doctor Who gets renewed and it only gets better. Like how Season 2 overall, I think, is an upgrade to Season 1. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Did you like Doctor Who Season 2? What did you think of this whole series? And what would be your rankings of these episodes? Let me know down in the comments below. And also, if you like this episode, don't forget to leave a like. Also subscribe. And I will see you in the next one.